2-0 against lower league opposition. 2 goals. Who on earth would only score 2 goals other than Manchester City and Chelsea and Liverpool? But other than that, who would only score 2 goals? Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is the Arsenal Raw Reaction Show, joining you this morning. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in. You join me from a hotel here in Newcastle-under-Lyme. That's not Newcastle that you know it. It's a little town kind of outside of Stoke where my hotel happens to be this midweek. After last night's 2-0 victory against Port Vale in the third round of the League Cup. It was a experience. It's always kind of like nice going back to the footballing roots, if you will, of kind of the English footballing pyramid at times, I find, because what I will say is that this is the first time I've been to one of these types of grounds, since really Arsenal played Oxford, you will remember, in the cup as well. So yeah, it's always a cool experience kind of getting Arsenal and seeing them in I was going to say the doldrums, but I think that does disrespect to Port Vale. It's actually a pretty good stadium, Israel Park, for what it is, and it's always an interesting experience to go to some of these lower league grounds. First of all, I start with an admission. I completely forgot my microphone stand, so I've currently wrapped this microphone in a pair of socks to make it easier to hold, so hopefully there won't be a background noise while I'm holding it in my hands as well. So do bear with me. They are clean. Just want to make that very clear. They're a clean pair of socks. They won't be after the show is finished because they are the socks for the day. So do forgive if there's any kind of like rustling or background noise. It is because I'm having to hold the microphone and there isn't really any way of propping it up in the right place. But I wanted to make sure that I had the best audio quality possible for the game as well. Good morning to you all joining us in the chat box. Really hope you're doing good. Really hope you're doing well, of course, too. Glenn, Barry, Claire, currently Poos. We've got Rob and Carl. We've got Aris Silky and Natty Tom. We've got Trina. We've got Knowledge in the chat. Mike, Blackshine, Claire, Tom, Steve, Brian, Runs of Cows, Steve Stone, Matt G, Jamil. Good morning to you all. Thank you so much for tuning in, as always. Really appreciate your time. Really appreciate your listening. I really do appreciate you doing so. Claire says, why do you need socks to hold it? Does it not have a handle? No, it's just a tiny little microphone. It's usually on the Rödergard stand, and you kind of screw it in. So it's kind of difficult to hold it without it having kind of any kind of rustling with my hand holding it. So I thought, let's wrap it in some socks, and then hopefully the audio will flow a lot more nicely for you. But good morning to you all. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in. Greatly appreciate you listening. It's not going to be a hugely long show this morning because there is a train to catch heading back to London, of course, after last night's game. But we're going to go through, obviously, some of the occurrences from yesterday's match and get some of your thoughts, of course, in the chat box as well. So let's not waste any time, shall we? And start with just an overall feeling of the game itself. Not great, but not bad, I think, is probably the way to look at it. When you go against lower league opposition, you always have to kind of remember that there is a jeopardy factor to this. You're playing away at a ground that is experiencing something of an occasion for the first time in this case, since 1999. It was the most kind of people that was ever at Vale Park for, the last 27 years or so. Quite incredible, 26 years or so. And it was a great atmosphere. It was a great day. And I think the fans really enjoyed themselves at the game. But what I will say is that they really did limit Arsenal, to be honest. There was a real kind of doggedness about the performance. There was a real kind of belief at times about opportunities. But they didn't have a single shot on target, of course, all game. I don't think Kepa had anything to do really throughout the match. There was a few crosses that Arsenal had to deal with. But besides that, they obviously didn't do anything. And when Arsenal scored their opening goal, which we'll come on to, I thought there was a feeling, of course, that Arsenal might go on to win this game at a canter. Now, as I alluded to in the opening of the show, Manchester City, Chelsea, Liverpool all faced lower league opposition during midweek and only managed to score 2 goals themselves. It's not a foregone conclusion that you're going to score a lot of goals. I asked Mikel Arteta that myself after the game. And, he said specifically that it is kind of impressive and it shows you the strength of the English footballing pyramid, that so many teams have only been able to score twice in these types of matches. It's unbelievable how tough it is. And we knew that by looking at last night, Liverpool and Chelsea, and how long it took them to actually win the game. That they have to expect that if something happens, if something different happens, great. But you're going to have to really earn the right to win the games here. And Arsenal did earn that right, as well. And I think Arsenal did, certainly, at least from the perspective of me in the stadium, were the only team that were going to win that match. So while the scoreline maybe isn't as nice and as strong as we would all like it to be, all that matters on the day is that Arsenal go through to the next round. That's exactly what they did. Arteta made 9 changes, of course, from the team that played against Manchester City. And it probably is a bit of a testament, of course, to just how strong Arsenal's squad is, that they can make 9 changes for a cup game. And this is how strong the team is now. It is quite impressive just how strong Arsenal's squad is and the depth that they've got. Kepa, White, Saliba, Mosquera, Lewis Skelly, Norgard, Marino, Nwaneri, Saka, Eze, and Martinelli. This is bearing in mind, of course, that there currently is no Kai Havertz, no Gabriel Jesus, no Noni Madueke, all currently out injured at the moment. No Pierre Hincapié, of course, as well. So many players still are out and to return to make this squad even more impressive. So, again, it's just another highlight of just how impressive and how deep Arsenal's squad is going into this brand new season. And, first start, of course, for Norgard, I thought he had a decent game. He wasn't amazing. He's just there to produce kind of those solid midfield performances. He spoke to the press after the game as well. He's a really kind of friendly, nice guy. No bad words to say about him whatsoever. Kepa, of course, made his debut as well for Arsenal. Had very little to do, just as I said before, had to kind of just command his box, collect crosses when they came, and distribute the ball well, which I thought that he did. It's Nwaneri and Miles Lewis Skelly's first starts of this season. They too, had decent games. And of course, Lewis Skelly was involved in the opening goal. Gabriel Martinelli picks up the ball after a really good move of it from the right to the left-hand side, passes the ball inside to Lewis Skelly, who finds a little flick to Eze, who just has to tap it past Gauchi, which he ended up doing pretty successfully. So, in the end, good finish, good start. Of course, you want to see Eberechi Eze get off the floor, get off and break that duck that he, of course, wanted to break as soon as feasibly possible. And he's done it, of course, just a few games into his Arsenal career, which is also really, really good. So happy days about Eze scoring. And, of course, I think Arteta also spoke after the game a little bit more in depth about Eze. He said he played very centrally against a team that's obviously playing a 5-4-1. They're super compact inside. It's not easy to find spaces, but he's very capable with the goal. You've seen that. There are another 3 or 4 actions that he's completely through and people playing through. He needs to still play more time a little bit with those guys to understand the timings, especially things that he needs to do. And then actions like that will be more consistent and better for us. In general, very good, but there is still a lot more to give. And yeah, this was the first time that we've seen Eze play for Arsenal in that left 8 role. We haven't seen that yet. And Arteta went with those 2 attacking midfielders. I think a lot of people thought maybe before the game that Martinelli was going to play in the number 9 position. But I think, it became quite apparent that it was going to be Marino playing in that role. We do like to play with more so kind of a target figure now these days in that number 9 role. And that's exactly what we did. And what I would say is, obviously a lot of the talk at the weekend was playing with 2 attacking, not a 2 attacking, but playing with 1 less, more box-to-box style midfielder against Manchester City, and this idea that if you don't start Marino and you start one of Eze or you start one of Nwaneri, that all of a sudden you're going to see a massive upturn on the type of chance creation. Now, against lower league opposition, Arsenal went with 2 very attacking midfielders ahead of Christian Norgard, but I don't think necessarily that we saw a massive upturn of that midfield creation. And I don't think it just goes without saying that because you've played Eze instead of Marino or because you played Nwaneri instead of Marino, that you're going to see a massive upturn in creation or different types of chances. For me, it was more about the fact that I want to see Arsenal have an extra man in those dangerous positions when you get the ball into the final third. And the times where Noni Madueke was there to kind of cut the ball back, there wasn't that extra attacking player in those positions. And we lacked that penetrative kind of force, if you will, into the box that would have given us certainly a lot more threat on the day. And of course, Arsenal did leave it late. Eze had another chance. Mikel Marino setting him up for the opportunity. Probably should have scored to make it 2-0 in that moment. Beyond that, there wasn't really too much else. There was another long ball through to Martinelli, which he couldn't take round the goalkeeper. And Gyökeres as well had an opportunity set up by Max Dowman, who entered the field in the second half. And I think, from the little that he had and on the time on the ball, still very impressive. Took players on, I think won a corner and obviously set up a big chance for Gyökeres as well. But Trossard, long ball over the top from Saliba, and Trossard's there to finish very well as well to kill the game off. Also, Bukayo Saka came off the field. He's not injured. It should be pointed out. He was playing, of course, in this game because he definitely needed to get the minutes as he's come back from injury to build up that match fitness. And of course, as well, he's been pushing to play in this game, as we heard from Mikel Arteta before the match. Arteta said it was planned. 60 minutes was the maximum. We had 4, almost 5 players already in the lineup that we had to get him out for different reasons, especially load, because they're coming from long periods out. So we planned for that. And a good thing is nobody got injured. So he has no muscular issues. And that's a very positive thing again. So that explained why Saka was both in the team and why he came off the field as well. But beyond that, Arteta's assessment effectively was that he said it was something that we discussed before the game, was what was at stake in the game is your reputation as a club, as a team, as an individual. We played these types of games. I've been here long enough to understand it's going to be very tricky. I think we started the game really well, very dominant, scored a goal. We had another 3 or 4 opening chances that we didn't manage to score the goal. In the second half, we lost a little bit of the grip of the game, especially with the direct play, with all those throw-ins to the sidelines and the winning of territory. And then again, we lack a bit of dominance and control. With a few adjustments, we go back to that. We scored a beautiful goal. The second goal from Willian, the quality of Leo to finish his top draw. In general, happy with the win. Clean sheet, debut for Kepa, the goal from Ebbs, his first for the club, and then the fact that even making 9 changes, this team can still perform really well. And I think that's a key point. These are new partnerships, new there's a new element being learned by a team when you make so many changes as well. And ultimately, Arsenal come away with victory, which in a game like this is all you want to come away with. In a cup game, if you win the game and you're dominant and you score a couple of goals, it's as simple as that. So happy days. Arsenal go through. They play Brighton, of course, in the next round of the competition, which I think they will be very happy about, because if you didn't know, but the week after Arsenal's game against Brighton in the Carabao Cup, they go away to Burnley, then away to Slavia Prague, and then away to Sunderland. So that kind of hell week at the beginning of November will be preceded, thankfully, by a home game and not another away fixture. But it's not all bad when you go away from home. But sometimes when you are away from home, you can find that you do think you're missing out on things, because perhaps there are some digital blockades in your way from enjoying what you would typically want to enjoy. Perhaps that's a program on Netflix. Perhaps that's the highlights of an Arsenal game. Well, if you get yourself a VPN subscription specifically for Nord, you won't have to worry about such a thing. By going to nordvpn.com/Gooner, you can get yourself a significant discount off a 1 or a 2-year plan. If you want to indeed do that, there is a 30-day money-back guarantee, of course, on the service, so that whatever you happen to experience, you don't need to worry about a risk. Who can say any fairer than that? But it is, of course, something that while you're in, perhaps like I am right now, a hotel, maybe you're using a hotel Wi-Fi service. Well, those hotel Wi-Fi services, you need to make sure that you are, when using a public Wi-Fi service, having an extra layer of protection to save your data, prevent snoopers and criminals from getting access to it. And a VPN service is what does that. And there is no other choice, I think we can all agree, than NordVPN. That's nordvpn.com/Gooner. You can go into the link in the description and, of course, go and check that out. Well, let's go to part 2, your questions and more, right after this. Right, let's jump into the chat box, shall we, and tackle some of your thoughts and get some of your feelings, of course, as well. Looking forward to seeing some of what you are indeed chatting about. Ryan says, our fan base is flawed. We won. Your ITKs and fans are still complaining. Hardest start to a league. We're sitting second in the league. What more do you want? Well, I guess first is it's probably what fans want, Ryan, to be fair. If it's not going to be second, it's that they're happy that it's not happy that we're not first. But I get where you're coming from. You know, the start to the Arsenal season this year has been a case of 4 wins, 1 draw, and of course, 1 frustrating defeat across all competitions. And we want more from the start of this season. We always want more. That's what fans do. We always want something extra. But in the end, Arsenal, while of course integrating all these brand new players, have managed, of course, to win every single game, bar the 2 fixtures against Man City and Liverpool, which, as we have discussed at length, for me, aren't going to be the 2 games that end up defining Arsenal's season. The games that define Arsenal's season are going to be the ones, of course, that we have failed to win and the ones that have let us down in the last couple of campaigns and prevented us from getting to where we want to go. Arsenal have a really, really good opportunity to lift silverware this season. And the Carabao Cup is, of course, one of those potential opportunities. Is it a trophy that's full of prestige and honour and is going to change the narrative of Arsenal Football Club? No, of course it's not. But it is a trophy. And it is something, of course, that can end this long-awaited run without silverware. So Arsenal need to take this competition seriously. And they have the squad to take this competition seriously. So I sincerely hope that they do exactly that. Marvin says, do you rate the Port Vale kit? I absolutely love the clean look of it. I mean, a lot of lower league kits, they're not as bad as you might think they might be. And, of course, the black and white aesthetic is something that I think Arsenal fans will take issue with to a degree, with the Tottenham element and maybe a Newcastle element. But I can see why people like the clean look of a white kit. Morris says, why don't we play those early balls to our front men, either long or through balls? Well, I guess it's something to do about philosophy and style and control and not wanting to give up possession. When you play a longer ball or a through ball, obviously it's a riskier pass. And so I guess there's going to be an element there that they don't want to relieve themselves of possession and they want to build to a more high level, high probability chance. Now, I agree with you. I think that we can be a lot more open to attack. I think we can be riskier. I don't want to be us. I don't want to be in a position where we are risk averse. I want us to be riskier. And I think it's something that we can learn to be more risky in games. But it also is something that can cost you. And we've seen that in previous seasons as well, that being risky has cost Arsenal. And maybe that's why there is an element of cautiousness sometimes to the game. Jason says, well, our front men had early through balls and longer balls. Trossard scored and Gyökeres missed his chance as well, which is well pointed out as well. There was 2 big chances created, of course, from 2 long balls. 1 was scored, 1 wasn't. Paul says, are the positives a clean sheet, no injuries, game time for those coming back from injury, and, of course, those who have been warming on the bench, Trossard and Eze and Mosquera, again, outstanding. What I will say about Mosquera is that I had him on, I didn't put anyone over a 7 out of 10 in the game. I don't really think it was any kind of 8 out of 10 performances. You could potentially put Eze as an 8 out of 10, but obviously you missed that big chance and was relatively quiet outside of the goal and that second chance. So I don't think I rated anyone above a 7. I had Mosquera on a 7, but I did put a 6 on his final score because there was a moment of madness from Mosquera. I don't know if you noticed it, but he basically produced what is known as the cardinal sin of football, which is to play the ball across your own back line and give the ball away and nearly lead to a chance, which did see me put his score down to a 6 because it was a horrendous moment from Mosquera. And I think one, of course, that he gets, happens now and gets that out of the way. So, hopefully that won't happen again. Tipsy says, out of the 9 total goals this season, 4 of them have been early long balls into the channels. And that's a really interesting point. And maybe perhaps one that we're not picking up on enough, that this is indeed something that Arsenal are doing. And I think it is. Arsenal definitely are playing a lot more direct this season as opposed to previous seasons. Can we do it more? Of course. Let's go and do it more. But it's certainly something I think that we are doing. Soup says they say the faster you attack, the faster the ball comes back, but surely also the faster you attack, the better chance you have of scoring. Risks must be taken. Mark says, Tom, can you discuss the injury to Liverpool's young centre-half, how thin they are in defence at this point, and what it means for our chance at the title? Yeah, it's, thoughts. And you never want to see a player get injured. I'm sorry. I'm just not one of those people that celebrates injuries of rival players. But is it Leone? I think the Italian defender of Liverpool, Giovanni Leone, suffered a significant ACL injury, is expected to miss the majority now of this season. I had been talking about in the summer, that Liverpool's business had lacked the pointedness, the preciseness, the precision of Arsenal's transfer window. They'd gone out and spent big money on big players like Isak and Wirtz and Ekitike, but they did need to bring in 2 defenders, and they did need to bring in a defensive midfielder. And of those 3, they only brought in 1 defender who they've now lost to a serious injury. They tried to bring in Mark Guehi towards the end of the window, but they left it too late and couldn't get the deal done in the end. And Crystal Palace turned around and said no. And for that reason, they are now short in those areas. And if Arsenal are to win the league, and there is something to be said about Liverpool as a result, it will be because, I think, of the shortness that they have in those positions that they didn't address. You look at Hugo Ekitike, an excellent start to the season, and Isak is a wonderful signing. There's no doubt about that, and a brilliant striker getting off the mark, of course, this midweek. But there is a really solid question about asking the question of, could that 100 and whatever million that they spent on Isak could have been spent better on a defensive midfielder and another centre-half, and then, of course, use Ekitike and used, obviously, the players else that they have in that front line instead. I think there's probably an argument that it could have. Nika says, for me, it seems that even if we have creative players, we still struggle to create. Is this due to players or our play style? I think we put a lot of emphasis on us when there is also another team involved in these games. I think as Arsenal fans, sometimes we are very quick to be quite insular, quite introverted, and something of a one-man band. And we sometimes forget that there is 2 sides on a football pitch, and that the other team's mission, whenever they play against Arsenal, is to prevent, stifle, mitigate, prevent every single chance that Arsenal can create. You cannot always be dominant. You can't be free-flowing. You can't always find every single space, every single moment. And as I pointed out, there are other sides in this Carabao Cup that also only scored 2 goals against lower league opposition. You have to take into account every single factor of a football game. And against Manchester City, I've actually, in reflection, it's been a few days since the Man City game, and I've kind of changed my perspective somewhat. I was looking, and certainly the selection for me is still a bit of an issue. If I was to change one thing about Arsenal in that game against City, it would be the selection. But for me, the biggest reason that game ended in a draw that it ended in is not anything to do with Arsenal. The biggest reason why that game ended 1-1 is because of Pep Guardiola. And if you haven't seen his pre-match press conference ahead of the game they had against Huddersfield this week, I highly recommend you go and watch it. I retweeted a clip of that press conference onto my X page. So if you want to go and watch that little kind of monologue from Pep, I recommend you go and do that, because I think it's very revealing and very... it's just enlightening, I think, to hear Pep talk about the idea of celebrating a draw at Arsenal these days and how they changed their style and they changed their philosophy for that match. Sometimes you just have to turn around and say, the other team did a job on you. The other team performed excellently defensively and limited you to very little. And the fact that we managed to get a goal, I think, was just something to celebrate in the end. But it's frustrating we didn't win the game. Yes, I think there's more that we could have done ourselves, but I think in the end, in reflection, after a few days to think about the game, the biggest reason we didn't win that one was not because of us, and it was more because of what Manchester City did than it was to do with us. Fuad says, I know that you'll talk about the Newcastle game later on in the week, but where is your mind going in on that and who Mikel will play at left wing? I do think Ødegaard will be back. Well, I hope Ødegaard will be back, but he didn't get into this squad. So he's not had any time to kind of bed back in. I know it's only a minor shoulder injury and he should be back soon, but I just don't really think that he will come straight back into the squad. If it was me at Newcastle, I still think I'd start Martinelli on the left, Eze in the middle, Saka on the right, Gyökeres through the middle. That's what I would choose. That's what I would go with for this game. I think we're going to see Max Dowman a lot more on the bench, while Madueke, of course, is out as well. So we've got another attacking option. But that's what I'd go with. But it wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't shock me if we ended up seeing Mikel Merino in the midfield again because of the physicality of the Joelinton, Tonali and Guimaraes midfield that we're going to be going up against. So Newcastle's always been a very difficult ground to win at for any team. You know, it's not just Arsenal that struggle there. And it's worth pointing out also that they're not necessarily the Newcastle of the previous couple of seasons. They have struggled a little bit this season, Newcastle. Not defending, more so with scoring. You know, they've defended still pretty well. So that element of Newcastle still remains a very tough part of the team to overcome. But they are somewhat more toothless in attack, let's say. And I know that might be a statement that comes back to bite me, but I think that's probably a fair assessment of how Newcastle have started the campaign. Our organizer says, Tom, we scored against City with a ball over the top and again against Port Vale. What's that tell you? It tells you that there is an evolution going on about the way in which Arsenal are playing to a degree. You know, they are willing to play these balls in behind. They are willing to go a little bit more route one in how they approach these games. So I think that has to be a positive thing as well to look at also, that we are willing to do different things. Jack says we're constantly lowering our expectations. I mean, you might be, Jack, but certainly we're not. Arsenal's expectations remain to try and win every single competition that they enter. And certainly that's what they're going to be trying to do this season. That's why they've spent as much as they spent in the summer. And that's why they're trying to win every game that they play in as well. Maximia says, Nick Pope has 4 clean sheets, Tom. We need to figure out a way to get past him and that defence. And hopefully we will find a way of doing that, but we won't know if it's successful until the weekend. Paul says, why do you think our set-piece goals have dropped off? Because we have given teams the most examples of any team, and so everybody has all the data in the world. Now, yesterday, of course, I don't think we put one corner into the box. All of our corners were short in the game, and I think that was as a result of the fact that lower team oppositions tend to have pretty big defence, as did, and are quite aerially in those situations. So I think that's why we didn't. I don't think we wanted to create kind of a chaotic moment. I think we wanted to create an element of control, even when we had corners, because we've seen in the past the corners, especially if you go and watch lower league football, corners are actually a really key part of lower league football, because corners not only create obviously the opportunity for the team who's taken the corner to score, but they become one of the most high value turnover moments for the opposition team as well, because they recognize that they have to throw defenders up, because defenders in lower league opposition teams tend to be the most threatening aerially, other than if they've got a classic target man centre forward. Whereas you look at kind of Premier League sides nowadays, especially the top teams, there is a real physical and tall element to a lot of the squad. So midfielders, attackers, even wingers and fullbacks can, of course, bring you that physicality. But in the lower leagues, you tend to see kind of a stereotypical tall, big number 9 and 2 massive centre halves, or sometimes 3 centre halves. And so I think that Arsenal and Arteta in particular identified the fact that in yesterday's game, they weren't going to win the aerial battle when it came to those corners. And so therefore they wanted to keep control, take the risk factor away from what a corner turnover might be. And as a result, you know, they didn't concede and they didn't look. I think they didn't really look dangerous from a set piece either. And Declan Rice wasn't on the field. Madueke, who's been the other deliverer. Odegaard is another deliverer. Obviously, wasn't on the field either. Trossard has been another deliverer of a corner. It would have been Saka, who's not necessarily had too many great deliveries from corners of late either. Hashtag Danny says, I don't question the system, but we need more unpredictable players like last night, matching Mars Lewis Skelly, Eze's pass, Downman's pass to Gyökeres, Waneri. These players bring something. Marino and Rice don't have. Tipsy says, I think there was an element of practice with going short, providing more opportunities to break a deep block. I think I agree with you. Martin says, thank God for some thoughtful analysis. You're very welcome, Martin. Oslo says, I'm not blaming Marino. I just want creativity in the midfield. Gyökeres is screaming for it. This is on Arteta, and hopefully he makes the right choice. Well, Marino did set up that chance for Eze last night. He played the slip-through ball. It's not like he cannot be creative. It's not like he isn't creative, full stop. It's just that we have some players that are more creative than him. He can create opportunity, he can create big moments, and he should have got an assist in yesterday's game as well. So it's always important to not put these players into kind of binary pigeonholes, because otherwise you just end up talking about them in ways that just aren't very accurate into what they are. Patrick says, Gyökeres looked sharp. I thought he looked very determined last night, Gyökeres. Obviously, it's a shame that he didn't get his goal, but his touch was better. His pace looked good. He looked sharper. I would agree with you, Patrick. Mark says, to what do you ascribe the fall off in performance from Rice from last season to at least the first few games of this season? Any injuries that we don't know about? No, I think it's to do with the games, Mark. I really do think that the start to this season with United away, Liverpool away, City at home, these are games that, you aren't going to be at your free-flowing, brilliant best. You can't emphasize your best football away from home to a lower league opposition side. Again, you have a lot of the ball, but there aren't the turnovers, there aren't the moments. Rice didn't play in this game, obviously, until right at the end. But he had a good game against Leeds, had a good game against Forest. When he came off the bench, of course, against Forest. I just think that there is an element of over-analysis going on about the first 5 games in the league this season when we've had a very difficult start, and it won't be, as I point out, until probably November when we've had this run. The next 2 months are really key. The games that Madueke, ironically, is going to miss, this run of games is going to give us the best insight into Arsenal. These first 5 games just aren't. They just aren't going to give us the best insight into what we're like this season. We've not been able to kind of build up a momentum. We've not been able to build up any kind of consistency or flow because we have to continue to battle against these huge teams and these huge tactical battles, both mental and physically. So we're not going to see the best from Arsenal, I don't think, until these next 2 months. Hopefully it kicks off with Newcastle, who don't look like the side they were last season or the season before. Hopefully Arsenal can find themselves a rhythm and get that impressive form and football. That said, we've still scored 9 goals in the first 3 home games, including 8 in the first 2. So I think sometimes you can't be too picky about what's going on. Right, let's wrap things up there because, as I say, I've got to catch some trains. I've got to get some breakfast. I've got to get working. And I hope that indeed that you have a fantastic day as well. We're through to the 4th round of the Cup. Arsenal will play Brighton on the week commencing October 27th. And they will look, of course, to make it through to the 5th round. I don't know if the 5th round, is it the 5th round or is it just the quarterfinals after that stage? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games. So it will go down to 4 games in the 5th, which is the quarterfinal. So, yeah, get through this next game against Brighton and you're in the quarterfinals of the competition. It's a crazy thing, the League Cup. You can be really far down the line just after a couple of wins. So, yeah. And yes, Daniel, I'm going to put the socks on that are now covering the microphone because I don't want to put dirty socks around the microphone. These are clean socks. And now they're going to go on my feet. So thank you so much, as always, for tuning in. Have an absolutely fantastic day. Enjoy yourself. Stay safe. Stay well. Stay happy, respectful. I'll join you tomorrow morning, of course, for more news, more information. And, of course, there is a press conference tomorrow as well ahead of the game against Newcastle on Sunday. Speak to you soon. And, as always, up the Arsenal.